I have never seen anything like this in fantasy basketball. We got players like Karl Anthony Towns dropping in the rankings, KD, Steph Curry, like all of these players who have been staples of the fantasy basketball early rounds are now slowly but surely dropping. So what do? We want to pay attention to those up and coming players. In this episode, I'm going to share with you the top 10 young players you need to keep an eye on for fantasy basketball. We believe every NBA fan that plays fantasy football should also play fantasy basketball. So I know that this list is long overdue. We have so many new players in the fantasy basketball space, so many people coming over from fantasy football, and I get it, right? You finish drafting for fantasy football, you set your lineups, and you're like, wait a minute, I missed that urge to do some mock drafts and to like prepare my rankings and stuff. And that's what fantasy basketball is for. But you gotta know how to navigate these waters, and that's why we're here. If it's your first time here, I'm Robin Marks. I am a absolute fanatic when it comes to fantasy basketball. I've also worked in the space for a while. I've worked with NBC Sports. I used to be a ranker for #basketball, and now I'm providing free value to you here on the Believe Network. With that being said, we're going to jump right into number 10 on the list. Number 10 on this list is Evan Mobley, somebody that I've been super high on over the years, but I noticed that his rankings, especially his pre-draft rankings, have been dropping year after year. He was somebody who was being looked at in dynasty formats as almost like a top 15, top 20 prospect, but now, slowly but surely, he's kind of stabilized and got into a place where he's not really looked at with that much favor. However, I still think he has tons of room to grow. With that being said, last season, your man Evan Mobley played 50 games, so it's worth noting that he was a bit banged up, but he did manage to produce 15.7 points per game, 9.4 rebounds. He also had 1.4 blocks per game. So, for me, Evan Mobley is definitely someone who still possesses some upside. If you want to take a chance on him, I think it will pay off. There is a new coaching regime in Cleveland, so there might be some changes. But one thing that always provides value in the fantasy basketball space is defensive stats, if he can still keep up that 1.4 blocks per game, and also rebounding. So for me, if you're in a points league, this is a guy you want to keep your eye on. I believe you can also get a deal on him to grab some value. Number 9 on this list is one of my favorite players in fantasy basketball, Jaylen Johnson. Last season, he came out of nowhere and literally took the fantasy basketball world by storm, producing some exceptionally good statistics. He is definitely someone you want to be eyeing in your drafts. The top is off, boobies are out if you grab yourself some Jaylen Johnson. Last season, Jaylen Johnson ended averaging 16 points per game, 8.7 rebounds, 3.6 assists, and check this out, y'all, 1.2 steals per game. He also chipped in about 0.8 blocks per game. With the departure of DeJounte Murray, there's going to be tons of opportunity for Jaylen Johnson to improve in all of these statistical categories. And one thing that I forgot to mention, all of these young players are 23 years old or younger. So anyone who's 24, 25, 26 will not be included in this list. Jaylen Johnson is 22 years old. So there is tons of room for him to grow and improve. I would definitely put a circle around him on your ranking sheet and get yourself some Jaylen Johnson. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Bet online, the game starts here. Number 8 on this list is Paolo Banchero. He is only 21 years old. Last year, he had a huge leap. Your man averaged 22.6 points per game last season. Yes, 6.9 rebounds, 5.4 assists, 0.9 steals, and about a half a block. Paolo Banchero is definitely someone in points leagues. And you know, here on this channel, we are all about points leagues. He's definitely somebody you want to keep an eye on and make sure you can try to get some value. He's been going super early in some of the points leagues that I've seen, but the upside is just undeniable. He's the type of guy that will definitely go all out. The glaze is real. If people are into Paolo Banchero, there is a reason. But remember, if you are in a points league, he is someone you want to pay attention to. Number 7 on this list is Tyrese Maxey. I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a point where people were looking at Tyrese Maxey like he would be the brand new James Harden. Although he had some really good games last season, it didn't really quite pan out like that. He wasn't that elite level talent. However, it's worth noting that your man just secured a 5-year, $204 million contract. So the 76ers believe in this young man. And I don't know if you've been watching what's happening with him online, but he's bulked up, yo. Like, Tyrese Maxey is out here looking like Conan the Barbarian. I'm just saying. Last season, Tyrese Maxey averaged 25.9 points per game. That is exceptionally fire. 3.7 rebounds, 6.2 assists, 1 steal per game. There is still tons of room for growth for this young man. He is only 23 years old, and that's why we want to pay attention to these younger players, because they are ascending as opposed to some of the older guys where they're declining and regressing. So I would keep an eye on Tyrese Maxey, and right now people are not as high on him as they once were. However, he could have a superior leap, so pay attention. Number 6 on this list is Kade Cunningham, one of my favorite players in fantasy basketball. I was way too high on him last season, I'll admit, but I believe that huge leap that I was waiting for and expecting is on the way. If you want to make sure you get a solid point guard that can distribute the rock, but also rack up some points for points leagues, this is the guy you want to take a look at. He is overdue for a leap. He is only 22 years old, and I believe he is going to be one of the elite point guards in the NBA. Last season, Kade Cunningham averaged 22.7 points per game, 4.3 rebounds, and check this out, 7.5 assists. Yes. He also averaged 0.9, a little less than a steal a game. Listen, Kade Cunningham is definitely, if healthy, is definitely somebody you want on your fantasy team. And he played 62 games, which is not perfect, but it's enough to get you the value that you need, especially if you can secure a spot in the fantasy basketball playoffs. I am drafting Kade Cunningham wherever I can. Number 5 on this list is Alperen Sengun. This guy is the baby Joker. He does it all, y'all. And I was speaking to one of my homies who's from Houston, and he doesn't really look at him as a center. He kind of looks at him as a dynamic power forward. However, he's playing the 5. He can play the 4 as well. Your man is really beasting out when it comes to these different statistical categories. There are some struggles from the free throw line, so that is something you have to deal with. But for points leagues, that's not going to impact you as much. If your man is grabbing rebounds, if your man is dishing out assists, and if your man is putting up buckets, he is going to provide you the fantasy value that you need to win in the playoffs. Last season, Alperen Sengun averaged 21.1 points per game. Yes, 9.3 rebounds. Come on. 5 assists per game. Do you see where we're going here? Baby Joker. And also, Alperen Sengun had 1.2 steals per game, and 0.7 blocks per game. Alperen Şengün is one of my favorite players. He is going higher in drafts than I would like to draft him, but I'm okay with paying because the daggone benefit and the ROI, the return on your investment, is going to be huge. He is only 22 years old, stands at 6'11", 243 pounds. This guy is the truth. Draft yourself some Alperen Şengün. Number 4 player you want to look at when it comes to these young NBA stars is LaMelo Ball. Like, yes, LaMelo Ball has ankle issues. We all know it, right? It's like he was playing against Hot Sauce in the And1 tournament and got his ankles broke permanently. But think about this. Steph Curry at one point, people were saying the same thing about him, that he had weak ankles and that he's always injured in the first few years of his career. Although LaMelo Ball has been around for a while, he's been around for 4 seasons, he is just 23 years old. So he meets our threshold of 23 years old for these young players, and he is a baller. Yes, he hasn't been available, and I get that. But if he plays, he will be a game changer for you. And he was a player that was going in the first round in the last couple of years, and now he's kind of regressed down into that second and third round area. So in a points league, if I can grab LaMelo Ball in the second round, that is a huge win. Last season, in just 22 games, LaMelo Ball averaged 23.9 points per game, 5 rebounds, 8 assists, 1.8 steals. Yes, almost 2 steals a game. Definitely, LaMelo Ball is the type of player you want to have on your points league squad, especially with assists being heavily weighted and steals being heavily weighted. If he can continue that trend of grabbing a steal and a half, 2 steals a game, it's going to be huge for you. He's definitely a league-winning type of player if he can stay healthy. Starting us off with the top 3 is Scotty Barnes. Scotty Barnes came out of nowhere last season, y'all. He is the rookie of the year, so that makes sense. But honestly, I did not believe. I had no idea that he would be this good, especially in dynasty formats. If you're playing in keeper leagues, this is the kind of guy that you want to hold on to. So again, I'm on the record. I didn't believe, and I have a video that probably will not age well on TikTok about how you shouldn't draft Scotty Barnes. I have totally changed my tune, raising my hand to say I was wrong. My bad, Scotty. Scotty Barnes last season averaged 19.9 points per game. Yes. 8.2 rebounds. Yes. 6.1 assists. Come on. 1.3 steals and 1.5 blocks per game. It don't get much better than that for fantasy basketball. Your man is just 23 years old, so much room to grow, so much upside. Scotty Barnes is somebody I'm looking at in that second round if I can get him there. I wouldn't even be mad if you grabbed him at the back of the first round. I wouldn't do it, but I wouldn't be mad. Draft yourself some Scotty Barnes. I got Chet Holmgren at number 2, and many people would disagree with that. Some people will have Scotty Barnes higher. Some people will have LaMelo Ball a little higher, so I get it. And listen, this is my take, and it's just because I believe the upside for Chet is like otherworldly. I think he's going to be one of the best players in NBA history when it's all said and done, if he can stay healthy. Yes, in points leagues last year, he finished in the mid-50s, I think at 54 last year. But check out these stats. He scored 16.5 points per game. Yes, 7.9 rebounds, 2.4 assists, 0.6 steals, and check this out, 2.3 blocks per game. Man, listen, that is fire. I'm just saying. So he's only 22 years old, 7'1". Yes, he can bulk up a little bit, but as he gets older, as he starts to fill out, he is going to be an elite talent for years to come. And those block numbers will always increase his fantasy value. And I'm sure this is no surprise. The number 1 young player that you want to keep an eye on is Victor Wembanyama. At the beginning of the season, or the offseason, I should say, I was looking at the Joker, Doncic as maybe being 1 and 2, and slowly but surely I kept moving Wemby up. Right now, Victor Wembanyama is my number 1 player to draft in points leagues. Why? Because of his exceptional skill sets. He can literally do it all. Last season, Victor Wembanyama averaged 21.4 points per game, 10.6 rebounds, 3.9 assists, 1.2 3.2 steals. And check this out, y'all. Come here. 3.6 blocks per game. Where they do that at? That is insane, yo. Your man, Victor Wembanyama, is only 20 years old. So there's no telling what this second year leap can look like. It can be something that will literally break fantasy basketball. And whether he does it this year or does it next year, Victor Wembanyama has officially cracked the code of fantasy and will be a staple in the #1 spot for all fantasy basketball for the next 10 years. Now that you know about the top 10 young players, why don't you check out our playlist about the top 100 players? This episode was presented to you by BetOnline.